Welcome to the Meat Grinder Retrospective. This is the first part of a series in which I'll be doing a review of each of the official Super Meat Boy games leading into the release of Super Meat Boy 3D. First up, the original Super Meat Boy. After Edmund Macmillan's Flash game Meat Boy became a hit on Newgrounds, he was contacted by both Nintendo and Microsoft to develop a game for their respective digital services, WiiWare and Xbox Live Arcade. It was quickly decided that this game would be a successor to Meat Boy, and much bigger than before. Tommy Refenes was brought onto the project as a programmer, having previously worked with Ed on Grey Matter, and the two formed Team Meat. Danny Baranowski returned from Meat Boy as composer, and Jordan Fair provided sound effects. Development began in January of 2009, and the game was slated for release in early 2010. However, the game would be delayed by a few months to add more levels. This also gave Team Meat more time to improve the quality of the project. Eventually, with the force of hundreds of difficult levels and a boisterous title drop, the budding world of indie games was hit with Super Meat Boy! The game was initially released on October 20th, 2010 for Xbox Live Arcade on Xbox 360, later releasing on PC that November. The WiiWare release, meanwhile, was unfortunately cancelled. The game got too big for the service's file limitations after its delay. The game was a hit, shedding a positive light on indie gaming and being a notable entry in the resurgence of 2D platformers at the time. Later down the line, with the help of Blitworks, the game would also be ported to PS4, PS Vita, Wii U, and Nintendo Switch, giving more players a taste of that delicious meat. Wait, is that cannibalism? Wikipedia to this day considers it one of the best games of all time. As do I. Let's get into that, shall we? Most of Super Meat Boy's elements are a drastic evolution of those seen in Meat Boy. The story, for one, is similar to the Flash game on the surface. Dr. Fetus kidnaps Bandage Girl, and it's up to Meat Boy to save his lover. But this time around, the details and presentation are really souped up. Cutscenes are fully animated in Edmund's iconic Flash art style, complete with an epic score. Bandage Girl doesn't just win the game for you. There's more characters, crazier set pieces, and a deep love for old-school video games that's on display at all times. My favorite aspect of these improvements is Dr. Fetus. He went from merely a jerk who literally steals your girl to a genuine psychopath who burns down the wildlife, mass-produces weapons, commits first-degree murder, and nukes the entire planet, all done as casually as possible with a gleeful look on his face and a certain finger pointed straight up. He's just a hater! Truly a Sigma for the ages, and one of my favorite villains and characters in all of gaming. To me, Super Meat Boy has always been a synergy of two tones. On one hand, you have epic 80s video game hero moments, and on the other side, you have this thoroughly disturbed melancholy, often used for dark humor. For every chase with a chainsaw mecha with electric guitar, there's a somber moment where a squirrel laments the loss of his home and his loved ones, only to get decapitated. For every climactic final battle in a flying castle, there's Dr. Fetus gasping for air as he flops around in a ditch. And even as the world ends and everyone is dead, you still have to save your girlfriend. Such an unbelievably strong tone. Though I do like Super Meat Boy Forever, I always thought it was missing that darker side. Some pretty crazy stuff happens in that game, but nothing super unsettling or creepy like the first. Whether that's due to Edmund's lack of involvement or other factors is up in the air. This evolving tone isn't just expressed through individual moments, but also in level themes, or chapters, and the transitions within. Chapter 1 is a forest that burns down over time, which leads into Chapter 2, a haunted, disease-riddled hospital. Chapter 3 is a salt factory. Not too bad on paper, but when you remember that Meat Boy is basically one big open wound, yeah, that's messed up. But after a high-energy race with a clone of Meat Boy made from Dr. Fetus' shit, he goes to hell. Literally, he's in hell now. Why? Premarital sex. Look it up, I'm not kidding. Then, after toiling for a bit, he's literally blasted out of hell by a nuke. What? Why? How? Sure. And now everyone is dead. Except for everyone who isn't. Then, of course, some of these ruins ascend to become Dr. Fetus' flying castle. Because video game. And when that's all done, you get access to the Cotton Alley, where Bandage Girl gets to enjoy a bubbly, bouncy, pink adventure that's worse than hell. And I mean the real one this time. But that's more of a gameplay thing. Speaking of... the controls are basically the same as in Meat Boy, save for having to run by holding a button, but the movement is much more refined. Rather than using a pre-existing engine for physics, Tommy Refenes programmed his own to ensure he and Edmund could tweak all aspects of the movement to be as specific and precise as possible. The result is absolute gold. Meat Boy has the perfect running speed, and that ties into a liberating weightlessness as he jumps into the air with a strong arc. And of course, wall jumps feel fast and fine-tuned, especially when scaling a single wall a la Mega Man X. With only these actions, you have so many options on how to approach the challenges in the game. Some of these challenges will force you to maneuver in ways you've never thought to try before. All of this makes for a game feel with excellent varied movement on both a vertical and horizontal scale. I'd say the only thing missing is a cleaner way to slide down from a ledge. That's something Edmund actually added to his later platformer, The End Is Nigh. He could also be a little less slippery, but hey, he's constantly standing in a pool of his own blood, give him a break. Now, the main thing Super Meat Boy is known for is its difficulty. It was basically one of the first of those super hard indie precision platformers, a collection that has greatly expanded in the 15 years since its release. Sounds scary for newcomers at first, but the game does a great job at easing the player into it all. The first 5 levels have no real obstacles and provide a perfect playing ground to learn the controls. This transitions into a solid difficulty curve that consistently ramps up for most of the game. New mechanics and hazards are slowly introduced to the levels and later mixed into each other to create unique situations. For instance, here's a level with crumbling blocks. Now here's a level with saw shooters. And now, here's a level with a brand new challenge based on mixing both of these hazards. This formula continues throughout the entire game. Some of the later levels in Hell and Rapture get a little puzzly with their gimmicks, but that's to serve as a new challenge after proving your reflexes by clearing the salt factory. All in all, the game finds new ways to get harder as it goes. Thankfully, if a level is too tricky, you can just skip it. You're allowed to skip 3 levels per chapter and still fight the boss at the end. However, the final chapter, The End, doesn't have that luxury. It only has 5 levels before the final boss, but it returns you to the basics at their highest degree in some of the longest levels in the game. Just you and saws to avoid via endurance and execution of pure skill. From start to finish, it isn't too taxing. Out of all the notable entries in the specific category of side-scroller, it's probably the easiest one to reach the credits. That's where the Dark World comes in. In a decision that single-handedly delayed the game by nearly an entire year, every single main level from all 7 chapters has a harder variant. You're not even required to touch the Dark World if you just want to beat the game, but if you want 100%, you're gonna have to do all of it. For a smoother learning curve, I recommend playing through the Light World up to the Cotton Alley, then going back to the Dark World starting with the Forest. It starts off manageable. Forest Dark is roughly as difficult as Hospital Light, but it's also quicker to utilize more advanced movement. From there, the difficulty ramps up much higher as it goes. Salt Factory Dark is harder than Rapture Light, and Rapture Dark is a genuine nightmare. Despite that, however, nothing ever feels unfair. Except these things. I'd say they can go to hell, but they're already there. These guys also suck. Every death is your own fault, and it teaches you what not to do. The game is a continuous battle of getting to know the controls and movement on a deeper level, and reaching a point where you can consider yourself an expert after so many trials and tribulations brings an immense wave of satisfaction. I would argue that Super Meat Boy has one of the most satisfying skill ceilings of any single-player game. So there's a lot of levels, but what do you do with them? Well, beating a Light World level fast enough grants you an A+ rank, which unlocks its Dark World variant. Getting an A+ on a Dark World level, meanwhile, just kinda means you're slay. Some levels feature collectible bandages, which can unlock new characters, and others contain retro-style warp zones. The latter take you to new 3-part levels based on 8-bit and 4-bit aesthetics of consoles past. Most feature 2 bandages and need to be completed with limited lives, but some instead have you use new characters and their abilities. Completing those ones lets you unlock these new characters as well. And who are these unlockable characters exactly? Well, most of them are guest stars from other indie games, and headcrab. This is another reason why Super Meat Boy kinda blew a hole open in the world of indie gaming. Not only was it a really good indie game itself, but it also represented so many classics, most of which from creators who are still around today. Some of my favorites from other games include Commander Video, Runman, Captain Viridian, Pink Knight, and of course, Tofu Boy, everybody's favorite! He's so awesome that you have to unlock him with a secret code. I also want to give special mention to the Kid for this insane, infamous warp zone. Nowadays, I could beat it with a single-digit death count, but it took me nearly an entire decade to get to that point. He's probably the best character in the game besides Meat Boy, since he can use all his jumps, including his extra jump after falling off a ledge or wall. Ogmo and Flyrun share this trait as well. Yeah, that's right. Most of these characters have different abilities from Meat Boy, which I'm kinda mixed on personally. It's cool that they all have powers based on their origin games, but besides the occasional double jump bandage, none of the levels are built around them. To make up for having these abilities, most characters move and jump significantly worse than Meat Boy. As a result, they have a pretty bad time on some levels. Some are even outright impossible with certain characters, and that's excluding Tofu Boy. If Team Meat ever revisits guest characters in a future game, I want to see if people will be okay with any references being purely cosmetic, and making sure Quote can still do the BLJ, just like every other character. Moving on, there are also glitch levels. After beating a chapter, Bandage Girl may start to have a crash out in one of its levels. Touch her while she's doing so to enter that chapter's glitch level. You've got 3 lives to beat these extra long 8-bit levels, and completing each one adds plus 1% to your total, letting you get up to 106%, Golden God status. Sounds like a lot to do, right? Don't even get me started on the Deathless achievements. But what if it's not enough? What if you wanted to play Super Meat Boy forever? Well, take a trip to the Virtual Boy-ass Super Meat World. Available in the PC version 1.2.5 only. This is where custom levels and chapters go to be kinda shit. But there's plenty of good ones too. Plus a mode called The Unknown to jump into curated levels of varying difficulty. Some levels from the early days are featured into Internet, a chapter collection exclusive to the Xbox version. You could even make some levels yourself. The editor comes with the game as a separate application, and it's a little weird, but if Edmund used it, it's probably goated. Give it a try. Unless you do this, then maybe stop. You know, this game's a looker when you're not the one making this stuff. The visuals of Super Meat Boy are a less discussed element of the game, but I think they're very effective. Most of the game's graphics are in Edmund's blocky, lineless art style, first seen in Triachnid and later used in Meat Boy. Compared to Meat Boy, where every asset was on the tile set, most obstacles are now severed from it and can be any size. That's not the only upgrade from the Flash game. It now takes advantage of a dynamic lighting system, pretty rare for a 2D game of its time. Some of my favorite looking levels are on the screen right now. Between these and the animated cutscenes, Super Meat Boy has the look of a Flash game if it was given a budget and freed from its action script reins. And that's basically what it is. The sound design is great too. The way Meat Boy splatters and splashes everywhere gives such a small character such a strong presence. And everything around him has this strong punch to it. Here's a rapid fire montage of all my favorite noises. But hey, sounds are just one of the 2 volume settings. What about the other? As previously stated, Danny Baranowski returned to compose for the game. All tracks from the Flash game have been remixed, and new ones are included to beef up the whole package. And it's all fantastic. Danny's signature EDM sound is compounded with some incredible guitars, and even beyond that, there's an epic and almost orchestrated feel to the music in the later chapters, sounding so different from anything in the original game. Again, Flash game with a budget. Then there's the Warp Zone music, featuring 8-bit remixes of the main level themes. Oh, and the cutscene scores that add so much gravitas to a hunk of shit sacrificing himself. My favorite tracks include Forest Funk, The Battle of Little Slugger, Chad's Broken Wind, Rocket Rider, and of course, Dr. Fetus's Castle. All in all, one of my favorite video game soundtracks of all time, and definitely my favorite of the 2. Wait, what? Yeah, I suppose we should get into this. This game has 2 soundtracks. For one reason or another, the rights to Danny's music were not renewed for the PS4 and PS Vita ports of the game, and this applied to all future ports as well. This was cause for a new soundtrack that happened to align with the game's 5th anniversary. It's easy to see a soundtrack replacement as a sad compromise, but they definitely made the best out of it, getting multiple talented composers to contribute, including Ridiculon, Scattle, and even Laura Shigihara. This soundtrack is used in the PS4, PS Vita, Wii U, and Nintendo Switch versions of the game. The Xbox version still has only the original soundtrack, while the PC version was updated to have a toggle between both. I remember buying the Switch version back when it came out, you know, just for fun after playing the PC version for so long. Even in 2018, I had no idea that the soundtrack was replaced, and when I heard it in-game, I felt pretty blindsided. I hated this OST for years as a result, but nowadays I really like it overall, even if I still prefer the original. Besides The End Is Nigh, this is probably my favorite work from Ridiculon, and Scattle and Shigehara's work is also wonderful and emblematic of their unique styles. It makes for a varied, if inconsistent, listen. Some tracks I actually like more than the originals, such as The End Light, Dr. Fetus' boss theme, or the entirety of Hell. Also, The End and Cotton Alley have unique Dark World music in this one. Ridiculon's contributions are notable here, as they would continue to compose for the series, including Super Meat Boy Forever and the upcoming Super Meat Boy 3D. So, definitely a good showing, but the original soundtrack clears. At least Danny returned to the IP with Rift of the Necrodancer. Still, I'll sometimes put on the 2015 soundtrack in the PC version if I want to give a repeat playthrough a different vibe. So it seems I have a lot of good things to say about this game. I must really love it or something. But when you love someone, you need to recognize the faults in the relationship or face a heartbreaking divorce. Yes, I'm married to Super Meat Boy. When a game does so much so well, it's easy to take whatever lumps it comes with for the ride. But that doesn't mean there aren't lumps. I have 3 notable issues with this game. Firstly, race mode. This was introduced in the Switch port in 2018, and later released on Steam that year. It's a local multiplayer mode in which 2 players race through a set of levels. Different characters and sets of levels can be used, and collecting bandages lets you skip levels, incentivizing the collection aspect of the game. It's a perfectly functional mode, so what's the problem? Well, if you're playing on the Switch version, there is no problem. The PC version is another story. Firstly, it's paid DLC, as compared to the Switch version where it's built in. This seems like a ripoff at first, but you'll be thankful for this because being DLC lets you turn it off. But why would you want that? Because this DLC completely breaks the game and screws up your save file. Specifically, it flips the collected bandages between Light and Dark World, letting you collect more than the 100 total bandages, plus a few other weird things. The visuals also get weird and buggy on occasion while it's enabled. To this day, it hasn't been fixed, and this is sadly what the mode is remembered for. If it works just fine on the Switch, why not here? Just an embarrassing post-mortem addition, even with being able to play Super Meat World levels in it. Thankfully, the suffering is optional. Just play the mode on Switch. Or just don't play it at all, which is your only option on Xbox, PlayStation, or even Wii U. Yes, I know you're out there, SMB Wii U players. The next 2 issues, however, both stem from the same problem. The classic adage is that projects are never finished, they're just released. The perfect video game never comes out, and even when it's an indie game made by 2 people, you gotta stop at some point, regardless of any concessions. Ed and Tommy have gone on record saying they wish they had even just 1 more week of development to polish some stuff, citing that specific elements of the game could be better with even the smallest of extra time. This regret can be felt in certain areas of the game. While the movement is super refined and polished, a lot of the game around it feels like it's held together with duct tape. Some stuff was fixed in patches for the PC version, but most issues are perennial. These unlock screens sometimes don't cover the whole window. If you wall jump frame perfect, you slide up the wall. The worst part about this one is that it's not consistent enough to use in speedruns. These moving platforms have no sound effects and weird collision. And if you're playing the unpatched PC version, the Alt key up and breaks the game and lets you teleport. There's plenty of little oddities like these throughout the game. Thankfully, most of them are either very small or you have to go out of your way to find them. However, one issue that every player is going to experience, and my pick for the weakest part of the game is the bosses. Look, none of them are terrible, but they're all some level of underbaked. Since Meat Boy can't fight back, give it time, all these bosses mostly sum up to avoiding attacks or obstacles. And most of them are pretty simple and linear as a result. Little Slugger and Little Horn have great spectacle, but they're basically the exact same thing every time you fight them. Like, there's no way to speed up their fights at all. Little Horn in particular is embarrassingly easy for how late it appears. Chad and Brownie are decent, but Chad isn't particularly interesting, while Brownie is basically just a normal level. You don't even have to beat him to win. Dr. Fetus is easily the best one, fitting as he's the final boss. Very challenging, with Fetus gunning you down through a giant saw-filled labyrinth. It does have a bit of that Little Slugger problem where the first part is basically an auto-scroller, but it's also got a great skip. It's the same in the escape scene, where you rescue Bandage Girl with her conscious on your back. This fight even has a Dark World version, complete with a secret ending. What's not to love? Well, remember when I said that none of the bosses were terrible? Kindly forget what I said. The Larrys suck. I suppose the worst chapter gets the worst boss, but this is terrible even for Rapture standards, and easily the low point of the whole game. The other bosses may be unremarkable, but at least they're consistent. This is basically the only part of the entire game where how quickly the level can be beaten is determined entirely by RNG. In a game where the any % world record is by a difference of milliseconds, it's an insulting barrier of entry. You could be on world record pace, hell, some of best segments pace, and the Larrys can just decide you lose. It's a good thing the cheese for this fight is extremely easy, because it's significantly preferable than doing it normally, because these worm fuckers deserve as few A presses as possible! And that's it, really. Yeah, one of my biggest issues with the game are that an optional DLC is bad, it has bugs, and some bosses aren't good. You know you're in for something fantastic. Super Meat Boy has always been a very special part of my life. It was a game I idolized for its sensibilities before I even got it. And when I got it, it kicked my ass until I kicked its own, and ultimately, it informed what I want out of a game. It doesn't have a heart-wrenching cinematic story or a normal map on Meat Boy's ass that lets you see every dimple, but it doesn't need to, and it never did. As someone who prioritizes gameplay and game design over all else, there's few better than this, both indie or otherwise. Whether you spend weeks, months, or even years climbing its difficulty curve, or if you can beat it 2 or even 3 times an hour, every player is provided with something substantial. That's basically what happened to me, reaching this game's level throughout the years, to the point of becoming an 80% speedrunner after so long, has been one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. And that was because of such tight gameplay and an enticing energy that never faded from my interest. No fat, all meat. As authentic a gaming experience as possible. I give Super Meat Boy a 10 out of 11. Join me next time on this retrospective for a review of Super Meat Boy Forever, a game that will definitely not see a double-digit score. Stay tuned. That's all for today. If you liked what you saw, subscribe. I'll be making Super Meat Boy videos every so often.